Getting old.
I'm going to be with mine on too.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Cox, Big Game Staff Biologist for Nevada Department of Wildlife. I'm going to give you maybe more than what I was thinking of giving you this morning, but I need to enlighten you on some information about these releases. We have a big game release plan that's already been approved a year and a half ago, and from time to time we reassess our whole card and see if we've got other opportunities on the landscape. And so Jason Salisbury had a couple, and they're the Gillis Range and the Garfield Hills. Just a few weeks ago, I thought this would be a very simple and quick agenda topic, but the landscape of bighorn sheep management and disease transmission that is ever changing has changed that, and has changed my outlook on these two release amendments. And really these primarily the Garfield Hill release amendment, it truly has embodied and epitomized all the things that I've brought forth the last year to you, to the sportsmen, to our NGOs, to our own biologists on the management of our bighorn sheep in the face of all these pathogens and these die-offs that we've been experiencing. So I want to kind of drill in a little bit about where I'm coming from and my concern. We've added some tools in our toolbox lately because we feel like we're at a point where we really needed a paradigm shift in how we approach bighorn sheep management. It's such a awesome program that we've had for years, making so many sheep out there on the landscape. And things have changed. So normally I would be excited. This particular release, the Garfield Hills, just to give you a little bit of background, it was actually the last official Nevada Bighorn Sheep Working Group was held right here at the convention center 7 years ago. Commissioner Robb was here, Jim Jeffers, Pat Cummings, Ken Gray, Tom Downham, Eddie Pribble, Larry Johnson, several of the great people that have been a part of our program. And at that time, we were really focused on habitat. What can we do to reduce the limiting factors of our herds and make more opportunities on the landscape to reintroduce sheep? The Payette National Forest issue had just come to light. We had just received the first draft of the WAFA guidelines for managing domestic sheep and wild sheep habitat. But we really were focused on our bighorn sheep matrix and identifying where else and where next we could put sheep. And we had limiting factors that we talked about. In fact, we had a field trip on the second day, and we went out to the Candelaria Hills. And there was a lot of excitement, and of course, the NGOs were saying, let's do this next year. Jason worked hard to get approval from the BLM to get water developments, which was really the single limiting factor in a lot of that country. Excelsiors, Garfield Hills, Candelaria Hills, Miller Mountain, all that country. It took us longer than the NGOs wanted, as always. They're always making sure that we're on task and focused, which is good. We've always needed that. And in fact, it was last fall that we made our first release in the Candelaria Hills. And so this year, NBU, Reno stepped up to the plate. We didn't have the staff, the guzzler crew time to put the water developments in that we needed. So they squeezed in their spring the 3 water developments in the Garfield Hills to really provide what we lastly needed, which was water to the Garfield Hills. In fact, I went out to the last one, and as always, just a great day. working with everyone to get what we need done. But it's amazing. Just last fall, I drew a polygon around this metapopulation in Mineral County, Esmeralda County. Goes from Lone Mountain all the way to the Wasatch, Mount Grant. And we were excited because we had sampled the Silver Peaks, Lone Mountain in the last few years. Everything was negative for nasty pathogens. Populations were booming. Obviously, we got U-hunts in a couple of those herds, and life was good. We were excited. We had opportunities to fill in the gaps. And then last fall, we had a hint of some poor health animals in Lone Mountain. We got some test results back this late winter, early spring, from both Lone Mountain and the Silver Peaks. We did some helicopter lethal sampling of some sheep, just a few, 2 or 3, out of Lone Mountain this spring in April. We confirmed that Lone Mountain has Mycoplasma over pneumoniae, and that there was we had strong indications that pneumonia was present, was physically running through that herd. To the extent we just don't know yet. The hunter harvested rams from the Silver Peaks and Lone Mountain that we had last year were positive for Mycoplasma. But we don't know, for example, in the Silver Peaks, what kind of population response we have yet. And then I think it was just a few days after I had submitted these 2 amendments for support material, we got a call from a citizen. Game warden went out to the Marietta portion of the Excelsiors, and there was a dead ram. It actually was alive the day before. It was brought in, and I actually helped on the necropsy, and the lungs were in pretty bad shape, and sure enough, it came back a few weeks later positive for pneumonia and positive for Mycoplasma over pneumoniae. The Marietta area was where we had released the augmentation complement last fall into the Excelsiors. We had a ram. We had about 4 satellite collared sheep. 1 was a ram. The remaining were ewes. The ewes pretty much did as scripted, stayed near the water developments. The ram, probably as expected, since it was a 2-year-old, started going on a walkabout. And it's not uncommon for those things to kind of check things out. Went north into the Garfield Hills, spent a few months, about a 15-mile jaunt, and then just about a month ago, came back to the Excelsiors. And reminding us that the movements among all these mountain ranges is real, and we've been developing guidelines on how we approach source stock use and whether or not we're going to conduct big game releases in certain areas based on risk, based on calculated risk, probability of risk. So, for example, we said, look, we're not going to use, quote, dirty sheep for source stock If we don't know they're dirty or clean, we're going to pre-sample. And we're committed to do that this fall before we do the major capture efforts, whether they be in the muddies, the bears, elsewhere, so that we have immediate information on what's happened or what's happening or not happening in those herds. And then on the back end and side of the release, which is a lot more jello, I guess, of taking a look at what sort of risks do we have, how much information do we have on those risks, whether they be domestic sheep, be it a public land allotment, private hobby flock, or having an adjacent herd that's positive for virulent pathogens. So just in a few months, we've gone from the excitement of seeing these dreams, things that we've been really hoping and praying for years to accomplish and to extend our herds. I got to tell you today that I just can't support, at least right now, until we get more information, this augmentation in the Garfield Hills. And I could go on and on and on, but that's kind of the gist. Not something that, I'm just frustrated as hell, but I've gone through played out every scenario, every way I could, and I just can't come up with any more logical decision other than to collect more information, try to figure out the extent of what's happening throughout that metapopulation, and kind of regroup and live another year to try to see if we can do something down the road. But for now, I'm just, and I've said this before, and I didn't always have this approach. I just can't use sheep. I can't play Russian roulette with our bighorn anymore. We just can't make these blind decisions and cross our fingers and put them behind our back and hope that positive things happen. So, questions?
Any questions?
I have one.
Commissioner Bliss?
Mike, I know this is probably a hard question to answer, but do you have some type of a time frame that you would look at it as far as collecting this information? Would it be some fall sampling or some type of a time frame?
Yeah, we are trying to get our ducks in order for this fall. We actually have a statewide coordination meeting in July. Try to get all of us on the same page, take a look at our checkbook, availability of the capture crews, and then obviously prioritize. We've got a laundry list that goes all the way to the floor of everybody wants to know what's happening and in multiple places. So we certainly have to prioritize that, but wherever we're going to go, and likely this will be one of the areas we're going to need to go, we've got the capture crew. We'll probably want to go in there in October. Even before then, though, we've been talking to all of our biologists, whether it's Jason or Tom Downham or Mike Podborny, Pat Cummings, Matt Jeffers, all of our biologists that have herds that have exposed to pathogens have population responses that are in question or negative. And so we've been putting out cameras. I know I talked to Jason during the Guzzler project, and he's going to work, if not already, work with Andy Stinson, try to get as many cameras out in the Excelsiors as possible, and see if we can learn more. We may have to do some lethal sampling of animals this summer just to get our hands on these things so we can see what's cooking or not. But I think, yeah, we're committed between here and this winter, now and this winter, to get a better snapshot, try to increase our knowledge. And as Dr. Wolf will tell you, nobody in the West has all this figured out. Just in the last month, there's been 2 major meetings. We've been down in Laughlin, meeting with California Fish and Wildlife and all the National Park Service units that potentially have pathogen issues: Grand Canyon, Mojave Preserve, Joshua Tree, Death Valley. And then just 2 weeks ago, we were in Fort Collins at the Northern Wild Sheep and Goat Council Symposium, held every 2 years. The major topic was disease management in the northern bighorn herds, and a lot of frustrations out there for sure, a lot of unknowns, and trying to get all of us working together, because no one state's going to figure this out. I mean, there are actually, it sucks sometimes, people looking at us because we got more sheep, going like, hey, what should we do? It's like, well, I'm sorry, but we don't have a silver bullet on a platter to give you. So I've been advocating in both those meetings that we need to pull all of us together, pull all of our resources together, and focus on not necessarily chasing the bug or even chasing the extent of the bug on the landscape, but taking these herds that have the different population responses to the pathogens, those who recover somewhat, and those that just fall down on their knees and never recover. And we've got them: Hayes Canyon, Rubies, East Humboldts, Santa Rosas, Sheep Range, the Pancakes, on and on and on. And a couple years ago, I collaborated with my counterpart in Montana. We did a survey, and you've probably heard this before, but of all the western states, what happened to your herds after the diseases were detected? And I just looked at that data set last night, and one of the questions we asked was, how many years post-die-off did it take for your population to recover? Or did it ever? And there's 160, 180 events throughout the West and Canada in that data set. And there's years of 29 years and 28 years and 21 years and 15 years and 12 years of nothing. People just sitting there waiting, hoping that something's going to change in these herds, some of them down to 10 animals. And so I advocated that we drill as deep as we can with all the resources that we have and all the talent that we have. Wildlife managers, biologists, veterinarians, pathologists, microbiologists, geneticists, and take those herds that have these different population responses that we all have. Colorado, Montana, ourselves, there's some Washington, there's so many other states that we have these common herds that both seem to respond or try to respond and then they go back into the gutter, or from the get-go they just fell prey, all age die-off, lamb recruitment never recovered, and see if we can set these up as replicates in a broad experimental design west-wide. And in fact, at the WAFA meeting in July in San Antonio, this is a major topic on our agenda, and we will be going to the directors and asking for the support of this effort, because we're all tired of kicking the can down the road and not having any answers.
Any further questions? Commissioner Drew.
Mike, you may have said this and I might have missed it, but Is your concern specific to the Garfield Hills, or is the concern also with the proposed Gillis augmentation?
Well, I also went through the Gillis Range with Perry yesterday while we were driving down here, saying, well, can we look at that a little differently? How much distance do we have? You know, it's right across the street to the north from the Garfield Hills. We have done some what I would call experiments. Some of them were planned and others were not, and then we called them experiments in the last few years because we lacked some information or lacked some insight of were we truly sharing animals with a resident herd that had pathogens or not. So we did that with East Humboldts and Rubies, truly an experiment to see the disease transmission from the mountain goats to the bighorn sheep. We possibly could do that with the Gillis Range, but I think it's because of the proximity of it, because of the propensity the first 6 months of animals to disperse, and chances are they probably would most likely disperse into the Gabbs Valley Range, to the north and east, but they could cross the highway and go south, and possibly contribute to disease transmission. So that one, I guess I can't say equivalently right now that I wouldn't consider it, but there'd have to be a lot of money invested and a lot of monitoring invested. And then, looking at our source stocks that we are so concerned about bursting at the seams, one of them being the Bear Mountains. The Bear Mountains was going to be the source stock for the Garfield Hills. We haven't seen more than a few drops of rain, even still, this spring in the Bears. And it's worse than it was last year, or will likely get there by September. And our southern region definitely had put together a good game plan in the short term. We've augmented with some temporary water developments, as you've heard, both in the Bears and the Muddies, to get those things along for the next 12 months. But all these things that we've been talking about, we've been running hard, and we've kind of got ourselves in a box.
Just since you brought it up, Mike, to follow up, any early results on the kind of the temporary water fix in those two areas? I mean, are the animals using those units, or is it too early in the summer to tell yet? Or
we just sent a letter out to the guides helping us look for stuff this summer, something we should have done years ago. I mean, these people spend months out there watching these sheep for their clients. And I had a sub-guide call me last week that was in the Muddies. They actually have one of the heritage tag holders. And they found 3 guzzlers dry. It wasn't unexpected. We knew that those likely were dry. White Basin, Safari, and Jerry. But I did send an email to Cody McKee, our habitat specialist biologist down in Las Vegas, and he did say that they have had animals approaching those tanks. Steve, do you know if they've actually gotten any use yet down in the Muddies? But he was pretty confident that they were going to start using them pretty quick. They haven't. He said in the email they haven't seen any use yet of the tank and the Bears yet. But maybe as the summer prolongs, hopefully we'll get them to use it.
Anybody else have any?
Oh. Why don't you come up?
Hi, Mark Farman, Habitat Staff Specialist. I help manage the Water Development Program, and Cody also told me that there's an existing water source at the Sterling Mine in the Bear Mountains that's a critical water source that, thank goodness, the mine owners have kept open for a long time. And the temporary tanks that you asked about have only recently been installed, so we expect their use to be good, but it's too soon to tell, basically.
Any other questions? So what you're saying is you're not comfortable at this point going forward with the amendment because you don't know any, you don't have the crystal ball.
Yeah, I think we certainly would like to have more information. And you've heard me before. In fact, when we approved the last plan, Commissioner Drew, we had one, maybe two releases that I said, look, we haven't got everything figured out yet. We haven't dealt with everything. So we did add a caveat to the Sonomas, that until we can sit down and eliminate that domestic sheep risk in the Sonoma range, that would sit idle. So we have done things like that to endorse the concept, but to make sure that we've got our homework identified.
I know where I'm at, and I hear what you're saying, Mike, about, you're questioning this amendment. But I would still like to approve the amendment today because we do have this situation in Bears and other places. Not saying you're going to use it, but I would hate to take it off the table. You don't have enough information to give us an answer today, and I realize that. But by the time you get enough information to get the answer, with the infrequency this board meets, we might not be able to meet your timing to make something happen. So I want to give you as many tools in the toolbox to take care of the issues we have at hand, whether it's too many sheep in one place, sickness in another, whatever the event is. In such a dynamic situation right now, we need to be able to react. And with the timing of these commission meetings, I think we could limit your ability to react. So what would your thought process be of us approving this today, knowing that it might not go forward, but giving you the ability, if you get positive indicators, you can go forward?
Yeah, I think it's just by adding some language that until sufficient information is gathered to provide us confidence that that the risk associated with those releases would be manageable, then we could do that. But until then, we wouldn't take action.
I'm confident Commissioner Drew can come up with language that would help us through that motion.
He's got some experience.
Real cool. I think you mentioned it, Mike, but what's your anticipated timeline on getting a better handle on this? Is it something that you think you could get a better understanding of for this season? Is it something that, even if you got into the fall, there still might be questions and we might be looking at next year anyway?
Well,
That might be a
since
tough one to
I've
answer.
become a kind of a doom and gloom guy here, not quite. I don't have a pen name called Debbie Downer, but let's play out the worst case scenario. So this metapopulation that includes the Lone Mountain, Silver Peaks, Monte Cristos, Pilot Peak, Gabbs Valley, Gillis Range, Excelsiors, Garfield Hills, Candelaria Hills, Miller Mountain, Volcanic Hills, probably even across the road, the Wasatch and Walker River. We know that we've got 3 herds, and let's say that we sample majority of them this fall. We find out that all of them have mycoplasma detected, and that maybe we actually see poor lamb recruitment. And again, it's hard to tease. It's been hard to tease that out with the droughts, and that's what's frustrating with all of us west-wide. And that was a big issue down south with Cal Fish and Wildlife and the Park Service was, man, these droughts. You would expect lamb recruitment to be in the toilet. So it's hard to say whether it was cause-effect with the pathogens. But we would, if we saw that throughout that entire metapopulation, and knowing the connectivity that we've created, we until we see something different with our understanding of these pathogens and how they respond, or how the populations respond to them, we may not do it
Understood.
in the foreseeable future, and let the animals do what they're going to do. Maybe someday we're going to be moving positive response herd animals that have certain pathogens to a site that has the same strain of the pathogen, and we've learned that then they can overcome it and have sustainable lamb recruitment. But until that's ironed out west-wide, we're telling all of ourselves that we just can't go there until we're assured that putting those animals out there is not going to just cause half of them to die in a year, and then we're licking our wounds, trying to say, well, definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different result.
Yeah, and I guess my question is on the flip side of that best case scenario. Do you have enough time this year to determine better what's going on, and then still have enough lead time to logistically pull it off this season? Because procedurally, I think it's an amendment to 14-15, so you're going to be coming back next summer?
Next summer
with
for the
next
new one.
plan. So, I get where Commissioner Rob's coming, but I'm thinking, does it make sense just to table this for now and build it into the next year's plan? Because logistically, we're not going to be able to pull it off anyway.
Well, maybe best case scenario, and Perry and I had kicked this around. Okay, say the ram was not resident in the Excelsiors. He went on a walkabout from somewhere. We don't know what direction. Hell, he could have came from California. Could have came from the White Mountains. And made no contact. Came in at dark of night. Was a loner. No breeding going on. And then died with his pathogens. But because we don't know where he came from, we're still a little like, could that other shoe fall off? And maybe over time, when we get the strain type back, we might have more information. It might be linked to who knows where. But and then if we sample this fall, everything's hunky-dory, and no virulent pathogens have been detected. Certainly our confidence would be higher, but it's probably not if, it's when that whole metapopulation will share its dirty laundry. So that's the tough one, is what time frame do you work in, and how much, it's that's a difficult one, but I think there's eventuality to this stuff. You've seen the maps. I mean, from Denial to Laughlin, at some point we're within 20 miles of every leapfrogged herd, and it's just a matter of time, whether it's a decade or 50 years, that things find their way up and down that path.
Well, and I guess more specifically on my question, and you started to touch on it, so best case scenario, you test this fall, everything's clean,
Would we do it?
you green light it. Logistically, do you have enough lead time to make it happen? Based on when your sampling would be. See what I'm saying? I guess from
Yeah, I
a
mean-
procedural standpoint, I'm asking, do we approve this with conditions, or do we table it and build it into next year when we know better?
I think it would be best to wait a year. I mean, I know, for example, the Bears, the Muddies, and even if we had to, we were considering the Monte Cristos, but we had to sample. You know, we'll sample in October, give ourselves 3 weeks lead time before the capture crew comes back. We'll have test results back, and those subsamples, we're going to hang our hat on them. And if all of them are negative, then we'll use those source stock if we have a release site, be it Utah or wherever. But there's a lot of baggage associated with this metapopulation, and it just seems each month there's something that is coming up that we just didn't expect. And I can't say that we're going to get the best case scenario between now and October.
My biggest concern is not where we're putting them, it's where we're taking them from. We know we got a metapopulation that is struggling and has problems right now. But by doing nothing where we have clean sheep, and we've proven time and time and time again, when you stack sheep on top of each other, bad things happen. And we've got sheep stacked on top of each other. The bad thing hasn't happened yet, but if we do nothing, it's coming. And then you just affected another metapopulation. That's my biggest thing. Not where we're putting them, but where we're taking them from. And it's a very expensive ewe harvest to go put them on a helicopter. There's easier ways to do it, cheaper ways to do it. We approved that tool in the toolbox. I think we're underutilizing it.
Yeah, and we have what we have this year for tags. So we'll have to, go back to the drawing board and as we get more information. But yeah, it's my job is starting to get less fun.
And nobody wants to do the things we're talking about, ewe hunts and everything that we're talking about. That's the last thing we want to do. You and I have worked on this for the past 15, 17 years together, long time. But all of our work seems to be sliding backwards underneath us. We're on a shaly hill and we're trying to take a step forward and we're ended up 3 feet down the hill.
Damn Talus.
I want to stop that slide someplace. And that's my concern, is the slide we're in. And I understand what you're saying of the risk of putting them someplace. I'm just looking at the risk of not taking them from someplace. Commissioner McNitch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mike, the concern about sliding backwards, and I hear your frustration, but, for one of the few times over the last several years that I've been here, we're talking about things that are hard to talk about. We're talking about wildlife health. We're talking about the health of these animals and managing them so that we're not creating problems for ourselves. And I know it seems like we're making steps backwards, but in a lot of ways, I don't see it that way. I see it that, it's a rough part of what we're dealing with. But to sit here and talk about not doing something because we've got more knowledge than we've had before, despite the frustrations and despite needing to know more, is a positive. I think it's a big deal. I mean, the stuff that Perry's brought to us, talking about, we're starting to understand a little bit more about when we should transplant and when we shouldn't, when we should augment, when we should mix these animals together, and understanding why and what those dynamics are. We're going to look back on this in 15, 20 years, and we're going to say, man, that was kind of a rough spot, but look where we're at now. And I think that, as we work our way through this spot, as you guys figure this stuff out, ultimately, any losses that we experience now are going to be real nullified in the future. I just believe that, and I appreciate that you're able to come up here, and I know it's tough to talk about it, Mike, and the frustration, but I do appreciate the fact that you come up here and you're talking to us about it, and I think it's a real important acknowledgement from the department and that these potential things or these possibilities are out there and that we're going to manage them. I think in that sense it's a real positive thing. So, as hard as it is.
Well, I agree with you. The realization of seeing these other western states, and I've spoken a lot, I drank a lot of beer with these folks, and it's coming to us. And I thought we were bulletproof. I was on cloud nine in the 2000s, and I was so excited to promote what we had going on here. And then I realized what had happened. The history plays out. We're all very similar. It's just different timelines within the different western states. And I guess the benefit of me going to being an initial member of this wild sheep working group and maintaining just dialogue with these folks on a weekly, monthly basis, we have learned to look at things in a bigger picture. You know, if you just focus on one herd or one county, you get a little myopic and you just don't see that train coming. And that again also kind of sucks every now and then, is I have to look at this in a big, broader picture that more than anybody else. And I really felt that the time had come that we quit we had to look in the mirror and say, look, we don't know everything. We need help. There's people out there that are smarter than us. I'm talking about as a biologist. And we have to be humble and say, will you help us? Instead of, we're kind of, we're cowboys sometimes, and we think we've got it all figured out, and we can go out there and have a great day putting sheep on the mountain, building a guzzler, and we sometimes forget about these little microscopic things that kick our ass now and then. And so it's been, I wouldn't say rewarding necessarily, but I just didn't see any other way other than to, again, have this paradigm shift, as you kind of alluded to, Commissioner McNinch, and try to tackle this big monster instead of just hoping and praying. So yeah, it's tough, but I think you're right. I think it's way overdue that we work together across the West in these multiple disciplines and see if we can figure out why certain herds recover and why certain herds don't. And in the meantime, we're being cautious.
Any other questions? It is an action item. We'll see if there's any public comment, and we'll bring it back to the commission, see where we're going. So we'll start with Rex and then Glenn.
Rex Flowers speaking for Washoe County. We voted to support the augmentation. We did not have this material available to us as far as the new pathogens and stuff, so I'm sure the board would back off with that knowledge. I would like to just say, though, that our biologists are extremely knowledgeable. They've got years and years behind them. They're number one. As far as the state, they've made us number one on the map. And I think all of a sudden, though, because of having like the U-hunt, maybe we're becoming overly cautious. They've always been cautious, but they've also been risk takers. And I think that's what's made us number one. And I would hope that we don't start living in fear of the unknown. They've done a heck of a good job, and I'd hate to see them not continue down that road, but we would support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn?
Glenn Bunch, Mineral County. I'd like to see this tool passed in the toolbox. Reason being, in the Gillis Range, Candelaria Hills, the sportsmen from all over, as well as Mineral County, has built several new units and put water in them. These units are standing ready for sheep to start using them. If they're not going to use them, we need to pump them out, because the water quality is going to turn to crap. It's going to grow stuff in it that's non-suitable for anybody else and destroy the unit itself. So we're going to have to make up our mind if we're going to put them in. And the sportsman worked. We got to where that the first one that was put in the Candelaria Hills took 2 full days. The last 2 that was put in, a day. They had that many people turn out to install them, to help build them and put them together. They were able to do it in a day. Now you're going to tell those sportsmen, well, we're not going to use them for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, or we may not use them at all. That's why I think it needs to be put in a toolbox. We need a delivery date, but you've encouraged the people to come out and work and put these units in for use, and we put water in them, because they hauled water from town with a water truck and filled them up. We weren't waiting on the rain. The county stepped forward, donated the water. So the units are there. They built a couple of new units in the Gillis Range, and one of them, they took a shot in the dark. It was an old one, hadn't been used. It was setting. Andy wanted it updated, and he knew he was taking a shot in the dark to update it, but he hoped the update would prove fruitful. A week after the new unit was put together, new apron, and it was filled up, they had 2 rams on it. And the cameras before that he had on it showed nothing. And he was really excited that it showed usage that quick. So the thing of it is, if we've got brand new pristine units out there, maybe if we brought in some good sheep, they would survive. But I know what I'm getting at is, I think we need it in the toolbox whether we put sheep on it or not, but if we're not going to put sheep on it, we need to pump the water out. And that's my opinion, because we got water quality that's going to start growing algae, and the next thing, what have we got? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. Mike, I'd like to first applaud you. When you first said that this was no longer fun, having lived through previous commission meetings where you were tortured with Director Wasley, saying that this isn't fun, I understand the pain you have in this one, because I thought you've had worse pain in the past. The Clark County CAB really supported everything that Mike talked about here and iterated where Dave was. There's a strong feeling that, we built it, we have to, Rex just, Glenn just said, we put all this stuff out there, we have to do something. The answer is no, we don't. What we have to do is be smart at where we're going and not be afraid, as Rex said, of what might happen, but be smart. As Dave said, we know more now about disease events in sheep than we've ever known in this state. And that education, we have to use that to do smart sheep augmentation when we do it in the future or not do it. And until we understand that, I think that we would be foolhardy to go out and do things, because we could either be exacerbating the problem or maybe there's not. But if you don't know that, are we willing to take that flip of the coin chance? And we know from the talk that Mike and Peregrine gave that we have connectivity of our sheep from Jawbridge all the way down to the McCullough. Over time, the sheep travel up and down the state. They walk around. And so until we figure out how to deal with, we call metapopulations. Metapopulations are only met in the sense that half of the sheep stay in one area, the other half mobile. And so, we listen to our big game biologist down south, Pat Cummins, and I know there's a lot of political pressure because we built things, and we have areas that are where we could put sheep, but I think that we should wait, and I think it's wise that we wait a year until we do this, and we table it as Vice Chairman Drew said. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Commissioner Macbeth.
I got a question for Mike. What does it hurt to, if we got a problem in the Bears with too many sheep, what is the issue of moving those sheep into the Excelsiors? And, you know, what are the risks? Is it a risk that those sheep, some of those rams might move back into the Bears and bring disease with them? Or, you know, I guess what I'm trying to understand, what, you know, if we're moving them into an area where there's potential for disease, you know, there still may be some opportunity for sportsmen. And if we're helping the Bears, if we do nothing, we haven't, you know, there's not going to be anything that's going to happen to Excelsiors, but we end up having a problem in the Bears. And so I guess that's the piece that I'm just listening to all this. It's not clicking for me.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. A lot of people that know me for a while, they know I'm accident prone, and depending on how I pick a knife up, it's going to cut me one way or the other. So it's pick your poison. It's pick your cause of death, I guess. Do you want to die of thirst, or do you want to die of pneumonia? But I guess I'll throw one more thought and concern is, all right, so let's say we this summer is even worse than it was last year in the Bears. And it's not just water. I mean, you know, you can talk to anyone who's been out in the Bears, sub-guides, guides, Pat Cummings. The forage is it's a dumpster fire. There's just, with almost little or no growth of the perennials the last 2 years, just everything's decadent and dried out. So we're running out of feed too, and that is a concern, and that's why this could be, you know, we wanted this to be